Welcome back to another episode of Five Journeys podcast, Live Like You Matter. Our guest today is Cassy Garcia, a New York Times bestselling author of Cook Once, Dinner Fix, Cook Once, Eat All Week, and Fed and Fit, as well as the creative force behind the popular food blog Fed and Fit. Eager to share her healthy living secrets with the world, she started Fed and Fit in 2011. She lives in San Antonio, Texas with her husband and 2 children. Welcome, Cassy Joy.
Thank you so much.
Very excited to have you.
All righty.
Yeah.
So shout out to Lexi who introduced us. Thank you, Lexi. All righty. So how did you get started on all this?
Oh my gosh. Well, it was over 10 years ago, which seems so silly. It feels so recent. And then a decade goes by. You blink. A little
you
over
have
10
kids,
years
right?
ago, I do. And I actually, since then, I now have 3. I have 3 little girls, 4 and under.
Congratulations.
Thank
Just
you.
don't blink again.
Fast.
Another 20 years is going to go. And
I know.
it goes fast, right?
Totally. I was chatting with a friend that I think I said in my next life, when my kids go to college, I want to become a novelist. And she's like, that happens sooner than you think it does. So, about 2011, I had really just come through a couple-year personal journey of trying to figure out my own health. I was in my early 20s. This was also around 2010, 2009 timeframe, where a lot of the conversations around health and wellness had a lot more to do with the quantity of food you were eating. There wasn't a whole lot of conversation, at least that I was exposed to as a fresh college grad, that had anything to do with food quality or healthy lifestyle habits or how sleep impacts overall health and wellness. And so I felt like I was in the wild, wild west trying to figure this out and put it together for myself. And I did. I turned my own personal health around, and because I was unwell in my early 20s and really thought, this can't be it. This can't be it for me. Like, there's no way that I'm supposed to have knee pain and hip pain and be exhausted all the time and to just constantly feel inflamed. Like, is this really it? And so it was through a long personal journey of healing myself that I discovered the true power behind health and wellness and nutrition became my focus then. So I went back to school again, became a holistic nutritionist, started working with folks one-on-one as an effort to kind of just pass the baton, share the love, and pay it forward. And that turned into Fed and Fit as a way where I was sharing healthy recipes that friends and family members and colleagues could use. And it really just blossomed from there, and then turned into this. We're essentially a publishing company now, and we publish about 5 articles a week. And I have a team that I get to work with to pull all that together.
That's pretty awesome.
So did you have that vision when you were starting out that that's where you wanted to be, or did it just evolve?
That's a really good question. In my heart of hearts, I think, and y'all, as business owners, right? You get to a point where you're passionate about your subject, but you eventually become passionate about business. And I'm of the belief now that nobody accidentally stumbles into a successful business. Like, there has to be some intention woven throughout every step. And if I think back and I assess my heart 10, 11 years ago, I wanted to build something that was bigger than myself. I had dreams of having employees and leading a team, because I also knew at one point I wanted to have a family, and I wanted to be able to have my cake and eat it too. I wanted to have a business and be able to go home and leave work at work sometimes. And that was only possible when you have a team that you can share the load with. And so that was a goal of mine. But what I didn't understand, and when I started Fed and Fit, was I thought, I'm just going to create this online editorial and people are just going to flock to what I write about on the internet. And that wasn't the case, because what you have to do is share of yourself in order to earn folks' trust, right? And that's really where I realized the power in personal blogging and sharing of my own story and my own journey, which allowed me to build incredible trust with this incredible community now that is the Fed and Fit readership. So I did have that vision. And also I never imagined that I would be so of the business. It would be so much about me and my life.
You started this before you had kids, right?
Well before. Before I was married. It was a lifetime ago. Yeah.
Especially 2011, like even in 2011, I would imagine that when you met your now spouse, that if you were like, yeah, I'm a blogger and I support myself, that they would have been like, what? Who does that? Like,
Oh, yeah.
You were on the vanguard. That was early.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that was it. I joke with folks that was still the day where I was at a cocktail party and you'd say I'm a blogger, and they'd be like, I'm sorry. And what is that? And and you can get paid for that? Like it's where folks only understood that you were validated if you wrote a book, which is kind of a joke, because my first book, I think I spent more on groceries than I ever made on it. And I figured out how to do it a little bit better on my second and my third one. But it's interesting. We've come a long way, I think, from what everybody understands this business to represent.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then how do you manage a business and put dinner on the table? That's the...
Yeah. I mean,
well, in our show notes, we want to talk about dinner and food prep, but then it's the entrepreneurial and the mom and the wife and everything else. So how do you balance that?
Imperfectly is how I balance it. It's a mess. It's absolutely pure chaos in a really lovely, wonderful way that I know I'll miss it one day for what it is. I have an amazingly incredible husband who's just an incredible dad. So that goes a long way to have a great support system. But what it looks like is we have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 9-month-old now. And Austin and I both work, and we both own our own businesses. That's my husband. And we go to work I'm usually here around 4 hours a day. So I work essentially 20-hour weeks that I'm physically here at our studio office. And then I run home and then go to juggling babies and making lunches and picking up messes and making dinner and trying to put dinner on the table from a joyful heart. And that I don't do it perfectly, but that's the intention, to bring peace and calm in this family experience around the dinner table is so important to me. And the only way that I found that that's possible is by way of a system, is by way of staying organized when and if possible. And also before kids, right? We would think about planning our week. And I would say, I'm going to carve out Sunday afternoon is when I plan my week. I write everything down in my calendar. And that's a luxury I just don't have these days. There's no time that I can predictably say, this is when I do my planning. And so the planning and the organizing is in the margins. It's when the kids have run outside and they're jumping on the trampoline with their dad and the baby's asleep. They're like, oh, I've got 15 minutes. I'm going to write down my plan.
That's a lot of time.
In a row.
That's a lot of time. Yeah, exactly. And don't blink and don't waste it. Take advantage of it. And so I would say that the keys to, finding a way to balance this home life, this work life, and still wanting to put a healthy, wholesome meal on the table for my family comes down to understanding that I'm not going to have a perfect system to stay organized, but how to prioritize in the margins, when to get all of my ducks in a row, and to lean on the system throughout the week. Because and there are plenty of weeks that I leave it up to chance, that I come home and it's 2:30, 3 o'clock, and I was like, I have no idea what's for dinner. There's plenty of times where that happens and we figure it out, but I feel better, more relaxed, and like there's a semblance of control or constant in the chaos if I've already made a plan and I'm just tipping over the dominoes.
I actually find the hardest part of meal planning because so we have 4 kids, and I would say I'm pretty anal, and we have help, thankfully. And the thing that I find the hardest is we have a whole freezer full of meat and chicken, except at 2:30 or 3 o'clock, if I have not taken that meat out, we are not having meat that night because it's frozen.
Yeah.
I think that's the hardest part of meal planning. And those are the nights when I'm like, how about tofu, peeps? Because it's not
a bad
frozen.
option.
No, not a bad option.
Yeah.
Or if it's Monday, hopefully you've caught something on Sunday.
That's true.
But I find that the hardest at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If I haven't planned it, that's when I'm so behind the 8 ball because of meat. And I'm not going out at that point to get it. Like if we don't have it, we're done.
Yeah.
So is there
I'm with you. The cake is baked, so to speak.
Yeah.
So how your kids are younger than ours. You're in a way earlier stage, which just different, I guess. So how is there any kind of do you do the Instapot? Is there any particular equipment that you prefer? What's kind of your go-to things or what are your top 3 meals that you think are kind of the easy part?
Yes. I would say the meals that I tend to lean on the most are going to be, I do love my Instant Pot. And I think that to own an Instant Pot and use it is to love it. It is, I've owned pressure cookers in the past and I've owned slow cookers. I still own both of those, but there's something really satisfying about an Instant Pot because the buttons are just really easy to understand. I love the timer. I love everything about it. So I lean on the Instant Pot a lot, and I'll use that to make a roast or to I'll put a pork shoulder in it, or I'll put a bunch of chicken breast in it and make shredded chicken. And that's really my key for the week is what I do is, to your point, if I get behind on defrosting my protein, my animal proteins during the week, there's no catching up, right? Because I'm not going to speed defrost something. But if I pre-cook, let's say 5 pounds of chicken and I shred it on a Monday, I intentionally take unflavored, unseasoned shredded chicken for 2 more meals and put it aside. And then I use that to mix and match into things. Because shredded chicken, I could use that to make tacos one night and put taco seasoning on it. I could use it to mix in and make some sort of a really yummy casserole. If we're going to have company over, something bigger and filling. Use it to sprinkle on salads. And so I would say that the Instant Pot, because of the ability to cook down proteins really quickly and efficiently, is something I lean on a lot, especially when it comes to shredded protein. So I'll shred beef, I'll shred pork, and I'll shred chicken. And I found that kind of protein is really versatile and able to use across a bunch of different mediums. So I'd say that's a big go-to. In our house, we do a lot of tacos. There's a book called Dragons Love Tacos. I'm not sure if y'all know it, but my girls, they love that book. And so when I ask them and I leave it open and I make sure I've got taco shells just in case, I say, what do you want for dinner tonight? And it's 99% of the time it's tacos. And so we do a lot of tacos, and tacos is just whatever you can fit in the shell, and they like building their own. We'll do softer, crunchy ones. So those are a lot of the ones that we make a lot. And then we do the occasional pasta night. I'm a big fan of minimizing food waste for a number of reasons. It's friendlier on the budget. It's friendlier on my time to just go shopping for the one-off thing that I actually don't need. And it's definitely better for the environment. And so what I do is, like, let's say if I'm making tacos, it's a taco night, and I cut up a quarter of a purple onion, or they call them red onions. I call them purple onions. I cut up a quarter of a purple onion and I have 3/4 of it left. What I will do with that onion is I'll put it in my little veggie bowl. I have a bowl in my refrigerator of leftover random vegetables. And so maybe if I have 3 cherry tomatoes I'm going to end up not using, or a few carrots, or an extra zucchini here or there, everything goes in the leftover veggie bowl. And then once a week, I make a meat sauce, a red sauce that I serve with noodles for our family, where I cook down all of those leftover vegetables as a way to make really good use of it. And so those are kind of the meals that we make over and over again at home.
I think what's really poignant about what you just said is because you just you just literally glossed over something that I don't do, and I'm not sure if other people do, but that is such an amazing organizational hack, which is just have a bowl in your fridge for stuff that you don't want to lose in the fridge, right? Because we have these drawers, and we have 2 vegetable drawers. No, okay, just for the record, we feed a lot of people. So we have 1, 2, 3. We have 3 fridges, a bunch of freezers. So stuff gets lost, right? So I'm thinking, okay, if we had a bowl for the stuff we want to keep track of, that would make life a lot easier.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking we just had broccoli that we didn't finish yesterday.
No, we finished it.
We did?
Gone.
Okay.
Gonzo. But yeah, to have a place to keep track of the work in progress. That for you seems like, for you it doesn't seem like amazing, but for me it's like, oh, I never really thought about that. Sounds kind of basic.
Well, and it's such a satisfying feeling to just take that bowl out of your refrigerator and use it all in one swoop, or give it a quick chop and be done with it, versus I know the pain because I've lived the pain, versus opening the veggie drawer and you're like, oh gosh, there's a half a carton of mushrooms and they're goopy now. Like they're done, that you forgot about.
Yeah. We have chickens, so everything goes to the chickens. Well, except for chocolate, citrus, and avocado, but everything else goes to the chickens. But I also I love the idea of a bowl.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's great.
It's the wayward vegetables bowl.
Yeah. So what is the one cook method?
So the cook once method is a little bit, no worry. It's kind of like what I described with that shredded chicken. It's the idea of combining batch cook principles with meal prep. So those two worlds are pretty distinct and they're pretty different, right? The batch cookers of the world, what they will do is they will make a whole bunch of carnitas. I'm Hispanic, so I think about carnitas a lot. We make a whole bunch of carnitas and we're like, we're going to eat carnitas all week long, right? We're going to eat carnitas tacos all week. I've done it, nothing against it, but that's kind of the batch cook world, and a whole bunch of beans. And this is what we're eating all week. And then the meal prep people, in a kind of specific sense, they tend to make their 5 breakfasts, their 5 lunch, and their 5 dinners all week long. And it's sometimes the same dinner, but you rinse and repeat every single day and you get all of that done. And what I have found, though, is that what was missing from both of those worlds are trying to get ahead because they don't have time necessarily to cook throughout the week. And what I found, though, is that folks who don't like leftovers and who prefer to eat different meals throughout the week, they're kind of left out of both of those worlds, right? Because you have to like leftovers or you have to like eating the same thing over and over again. But I like the idea of the time saving and the budget saving available for both of those if you're able to be really organized with your groceries. So what Cook Once does is we combine those but allow for some fresh meals along the way. So for example, you will prep anywhere between 1 and 3 components of your meal in advance. So let's say for the week, it is, like I said, the chicken breast. I'm going to cook 5 pounds of chicken breast and I'm going to shred it. I'm also going to cook 5 pounds of broccoli. I'm going to roast them all in one swoop. And I'm going to make a whole bunch of roasted sweet potatoes. 3 very basic ingredients. And then what we're going to do is take those cooked components and mix and match them throughout the week into totally different dinners that we cook and serve fresh, right? So I take my my shredded chicken, my roasted broccoli, and my sweet potato, and I mix it together with some sort of a buffalo sauce, and I bake it into a casserole one night for dinner. It's a fresh meal. It's not leftovers, and it's different from the loaded barbecue sweet potato that I'm going to serve the next night. And so that's kind of the idea, is to be able to also have my cake and eat it too. It's an ongoing theme, but I want to be able to have a fresh meal that didn't take me a lot of time to pull together, that is friendly on my budget, that allows for me to be in and out of the kitchen in 15 minutes during the week.
Do you feel like you have picky kids?
I have very typical children. I think I've got kids that they go through phases. Every kid, I have 2. Well, my youngest is eating now, but I essentially have 2 real data points. So that's not much. It's a data set of 2. But I would say they go through phases of they love something. They love blueberry. Blueberries make their world go round. And then the next day they're like, I don't want to see another blueberry. I'm offended that you put a blueberry on my plate.
That never happened.
I hate blueberries, Mama. How could you even say that? I never eat blueberries. Yeah. Right? Okay.
Except for yesterday.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they go through those cycles, but I would say that for the most part, I've tried really hard to cultivate no pressure around the dinner table with my children, which has kind of created these really curious little eaters. And if they decide that they woke up one day and don't want blueberries, I say, okay, then don't eat the blueberries. And I save them for the next day when they probably like them again. But sometimes they're picky and sometimes they gobble everything up. It really depends.
Have you read the book French Kids Eat Everything?
No, I haven't.
It's such a great book. It's about a woman who moves to France with her American children and just the complete and utter culture shock that occurs. But within the construct that in France, the French kids eat everything and there's no complaining about food. And it just, you eat what you're given and you don't snack in between meals. It's a very different approach to food than Americans have. Mm-hmm. And just this transformation that occurred in her life as a result of moving to France with her husband, who was French, for something like 2 or 3 years. And she talks about this window, this magic window before kids turn 4 and get opinions that unfortunately we only made with our very youngest because my kids were grown by the time we got to this book. But it talks all about like the youngest kids, give them a huge range, give them everything and don't make any noise about anything because they'll eat everything until they're like 3.5. And then they start to get opinions. But if you ingrain in them before they get opinions, you're further ahead of the 8 ball than being behind the 8 ball, depending on how it goes. So it was such an interesting read because it's all about, they go to school, they eat these like 6-course meals and they eat weird stuff, that my kids were like, wait, what? And that's how we started to talk about whenever you go places, you're going to try everything because you never know. Maybe you're going to like it. Try it 15 times in every form. And that tells you whether you like it or not. You can't say you don't like broccoli after eating it once. It's not enough.
Right. So. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I love it.
How do you sneak in healthy choices for your kids? Or is it just, this is the food we eat?
I'm pretty much in the camp, this is what's for dinner, or this is what's on the menu. And I have found that when my girls are involved in making dinner, they're far more likely to want to eat it. And so, for example, if I have one way that I like to introduce new foods is in a slaw, because I know that my girls love slaw. They love like a matchstick, something with carrots and some herbs and some citrus, some cabbage, those kinds of things. And we'll serve that as a really yummy, crunchy side. They love those kinds of vegetables. And so what I like to do to introduce some variety there is I will put something like jicama, for example. I'll cut up the jicama. They'll watch me do it. And then I will put that into the slaw. And then it's in something that they're familiar with. And then they're really curious and they'll try it in there and I'll ask them what they think. And by helping me mix it and by adding the pinch of salt here and there, they're just far more invested.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we definitely found that with at least our youngest, making black bean dip.
Yeah.
She's our expert in for our taco nights. Our black bean dip she has to have the right. She does everything. She puts in the salt, the lemon, whatever she needs to, and she's the expert, Aww. So she has to try it out.
Yep.
So
she's responsible for black bean dip.
That's sweet.
So when you started your system, where did you get inspiration for the recipes?
Oh gosh, I am a foodie by heart. I study food. I love food. My husband is a financial advisor kind of guy, and he just looks at the world through that lens, right? That's how he sees the world, is how finances move, and he's very fascinated by it. And we were talking about this yesterday at lunch. I look at the world through food. It's like how I experience the world, and I constantly thinking of it. And so in many ways it is. And so the well for food inspiration just never runs dry in my world. And so when I'm thinking about developing recipes for a book, for example, I try to think about what would my readers really like. And they want healthy, wholesome, easy one-pot casserole style meals that are also going to be really great for their family, friendly to a variety of different nutritional needs and limitations. And so it's the inspiration comes from what sounds good for dinner tonight, and that's just kind of where I write it down. I don't really like eating the same thing over and over again. I will for my kids. But I really like mixing things up. And so I don't know. It's so interesting. I always wonder on fedandfit.com at this point, we have about 2,000 free recipes. And then I have about another 1,000 recipes across my books. And I have more ideas than I know what to do with at this point.
That's pretty awesome.
It's like the creative process. The more you work in something, the bigger it gets.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How big is your team now?
There are 5 of us. There are 5 full-time folks over here now. And then we work with about 4 to 5 other part-time folks that weigh in on the various projects, like a designer, a graphic designer, and web development and SEO and stuff like that.
So for people I'm just thinking in terms of from our people that are listening or watching, where do you start? Like, is it just, like you said, grab an Instapot and do some chicken or beef and as a starter, or the sweet potatoes? What's a good place to, if we want to go down, use your method, which sounds amazing. Where do you start? What's a good place to begin?
That's a great question. I would say the place that I recommend folks start, especially if they're not confident yet in the kitchen, if they're feeling intimidated by the idea of cooking a meal from scratch, I say start with what feels the easiest. Let's say if you pick up a book, like one of my books. In my last book, I have a duck recipe in there. If that's really great, but if that intimidates you, please don't start there. Don't start with the duck.
I love ducks.
I was going to say, I like duck.
Duck is, I would put a plug in for duck because you cannot screw duck up. You can cook it to death.
That's true.
It's still moist. There have been times, we start our duck at 450 and then lower it to like 325 after, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. But there have been a couple times that I maybe didn't lower the heat. And 2 hours later, I was like, 4-letter expletives. I completely forgot about the duck and it's happy. So my argument is do a duck because you cannot screw it up. That's my argument.
That's true. I'm with you. And also put a pan under that duck because harder. That's true. Finding a good duck is sometimes challenging, and collect that. Folks, also, if you find the duck and you pay a lot of money for the duck, know that you're going to get at least 2 cups worth of duck fat out of that duck if you have some sort of a pan to collect the renderings. And that's a jar of ghee don't have to buy, next month. So there's a lot that you can do with the duck. But I want to bring that stress level down in the kitchen for folks who are just getting started. And so I say start with really familiar ingredients. Go to the ground beef section. Choose something that you feel really confident and comfortable with. Something that looks like a taco and something that looks like a salad, and start with what looks familiar. Try this out. Cook 3 pounds of ground beef, crumble it down, divide it up into 2 different meals and start there. How can I use this cooked ground beef into 2 different dinners that I'm going to make fresh this week? I have ideas and books, but go to your own ideas. What are the types of dishes that you really enjoy and you really love? Do you really love a stuffed potato? Right? I really love sweet potato with some sort of a crumbled protein on top of it and cilantro and coconut milk on top. Like, you can kind of start to piece together your own week based on the foods that you really, really love. And then by having that basic protein already cooked, you're doing this. You're doing the cook once thing. And then as your confidence starts to build and you're like, wow, I really got this. Then roast a whole chicken. Go for it. Try it. It's like, what's the worst that could happen is you wind up with a little bit of crispy chicken skin, which is not the worst thing in the world.
I love crispy chicken skin. I cooked my chicken, the breast. First time I ever cooked a chicken, I was in my 20s. I had just moved out of my mom's house and I call my mom and I'm like, Mom, there's no breast meat on my chicken. And this is before cell phones, so we couldn't FaceTime. And she's like, turn it over, stupid. And I was like, what? She's like, turn it over. I had cooked it breast down, not realizing that it mattered. Oh. It was like the juiciest breast. And since then, I always cook it breast down. But it was because of a mistake the first time.
How funny. My mother-in-law, that's hilarious. My father-in-law grew up on a turkey farm. And the way that these turkey farmers cooked their turkeys was breast down, upside down, because it made the breast even more moist.
Yep.
Who knew?
That's how I cook my chicken. Yeah, right? Happy mistakes. Yeah. But I was panicking because we had like 10 kids over, my roommate and I was like, I'll cook a chicken. Couldn't find the breast meat. I was freaking out. So, yeah. So, okay. So, can you talk about the difference between your books? Because you have you have the Cook Once, Eat All Week, and then the Cook Once Dinner Fix. What's the difference for people?
Cook Once, Eat All Week came out first. Yeah, I would say it depends on what you like. So Cook Once, Eat All Week, the way that one's organized is I do those 3 big components. I do a protein, a starch, and some sort of a vegetable. And we cook those 3 components all at once and on a prep day. So Cook Once, Eat All Week requires about 2 hours on a prep day. Let's say if it's a Sunday afternoon for some folks. And then you assemble those into 3 big dinners throughout the week. Okay. Cook Once Dinner Fix. I answered the mail. I listened to our readers and the folks who are buying the book and loving it. And they said, gosh, I love this. And I wish I could mix in a few more proteins. And I wish I could have some side dishes accounted for. And I wish I didn't have to do a prep day at all. And so with Cook Once Dinner Fix, we took away the prep day and pared it down into pairs of dinners. So it would be 2 ground beef dinners and 2 chicken dinners that work together and share a similar protein. So that, let's say if you're doing 4 home-cooked dinners a week, you can do a chicken pairing and a beef pairing and overlap them. So you're not eating chicken all week long. You're eating beef and chicken and alternating. So a way to provide a little more variety. I also made sure we had really great side dishes with all of those meals in Cook Once Dinner Fix. And Cook Once Eat All Week, I kind of left side dishes up to the imagination. I remember folks writing in, they're like, wow, these buffalo avocado boats are great, but what do I serve it with? I was like, I don't know, whatever you've got in your fridge. What do you mean? And so I learned it's good to give the full picture and the full plate. So we did that in Dinner Fix. Another difference in Dinner Fix is I also have a chapter for seafood, which is far more doable if you have just 2 dinners versus 3. So an example of a seafood dinner series would be we're going to roast an entire fillet of salmon and have roasted salmon one night with some roasted asparagus and fingerling potatoes, for example, and then save the other half of it. Everything is designed so you cook twice as much protein than you need on night 1. So you have intentional leftovers of just the protein. And then we take the rest of it and turn them into the best salmon cakes the next day or whenever you're ready to have that salmon again. And then we also have a vegetarian chapter in Cook Once Dinner Fix for folks who are looking for veggie-based meals.
That's great.
What's the most common mistake people do when they start with your method or when they start in general?
I think we take on too much. I think, not to cut you off, I know the answer.
Yeah,
I think the biggest mistake that folks make, and again, I know it because I feel the pain personally, is we take on too much too soon. It's kind of like it's the January 1st feeling where you're like, this is the new me. I
can do it all.
5-mile walk. Exactly. I'm going to go on a 5-mile walk every morning, and then I'm going to come home and I'm going to do a roasted chicken every night, and I'm going to do all of these things. And we make too many changes all at once because when one thing gets hung up or life doesn't go according to plan, well, you don't know how to recover the entire plan. Right. And so I think that doing a little bit at a time, adding in, if you do not cook a single dinner all week long, you don't cook anything in your home, start with one night. Say every Sunday night, I'm going to make myself something. I'm not going to just start cooking 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. But every Sunday dinner, I'm going to make myself something nice. And I say start small, build the muscle like you would when you're training for a marathon, right? You start off small and you work your way up in increments. And I think healthy habits, especially when it comes to time in the kitchen, are no different.
That's awesome. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I always say to people, have some kind of win. You know, you're either a fell swoop kind of person or you're an incremental person. If you're incremental, you're going to need to make deliberate small changes, have a win, and then build on that. If you're a fell swoop and you need to change everything because if you eat out once, you're never going to cook again, you need to honor how you do lifestyle change. And
right.
And have some like compassion. You're going to screw it up. You're going to cook the chicken breast down, right? Like you're going to screw it up.
As long as, but the thing is, if you cook it, most of the time you'll eat it. So
yeah.
whether it tastes good or not, it's yours. So
there's a couple things that I've cooked that I'm like, oh no, I'm not eating that. But that's pretty rare. Usually if I cook it, I eat it.
Yeah, so it's different.
Yeah. The kids might not eat it, but yeah, they can make eggs. So where can people find you? What's the, people, when they want to get in touch with you, how do they find you?
I've kept it pretty simple. My website is fedandfit.com. F as in Frank, EDANDFIT. And then it's the same on social media, Instagram, YouTube. I have a Fed and Fit channel that highlights how to make essentially dinner time much easier on you. And then we have a weekly free newsletter. There are about 70,000 people who get our newsletter every week, and I send them a menu for the week. And folks are really loving that. And so if you're looking for meal inspiration and easy dinners and things that work well together, like I talked about, like you can make twice as much chicken and use it in 2 different meals, our meal plans are written that way. So that's a free resource we give out to our readers. So if you go to fedandfit.com, you can sign up for the newsletter and get those resources for free.
Tell me something, Cassy. You mentioned that you're Hispanic. Do you ever make ceviche?
I do. Yeah, quite often.
Okay.
Yeah.
We just were in Peru and we had ceviche that was just to die for. And so now I'm on a what's the best recipe for ceviche kick?
We might have to go on the website then.
I know. I might have to hit your website up.
I've got one by heart if you're ready for it. You ready for
I'm ready.
it? This is my
I'm
favorite.
ready. Okay.
Okay. So what you're going to do, this is my favorite ceviche. My husband just got back from a 7-day fishing trip in Alaska, and he brought home a bunch of halibut for our family. So that is, and I love halibut, but it's my favorite fish for ceviche, halibut or shrimp, because I found that it doesn't, if you kind of like a duck, you cannot really overcook ceviche or halibut as ceviche, right? So ceviche, for those listening who don't know, it's actually not raw fish. You take raw fish and you cook it with the acid of either lemon or lime juice, and then you drain that off and add fresh on later. So my favorite ceviche is cubed in little 1/2-inch cubed pieces of halibut. And if it's partially frozen, it's going to be easier to cut into little cubes. So don't wait for it to thaw all the way. If it's partially frozen, that's going to be easier. Put it in a bowl and almost cover it with lime juice. And I like a ceviche verde. It's going to have jalapenos in there. You're going to let it cook for, let's give it about anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour. And then you're going to drain off the liquid that comes off of it. And you're going to add a little bit more lime juice, some olive oil, salt, pepper, jalapenos. I like to add tomatillos. So it's kind of like a very firm green tomato. I like to add avocado, some purple onion, and some cilantro. And it is so good. We will just...
Mango. You didn't say mango.
I'm getting hungry.
I know my mouth is watering. We have to make ceviche
That would
tomorrow.
be yummy too. Yep. We serve it with plantain chips. It's a really
in Peru,
good meal.
It was trout, red trout.
Was it? Oh, yeah.
Peru was red trout, but I think that's kind of because they're...
Well, that's what they got.
That's what they got. So, but yeah. I wonder if... Now, can you make it with cod? Because I just caught... I'm a fisher guy too, so...
Oh, yeah.
It's cod season, so
I think cod's going to hold up. Cod gets flaky in a way that some of the heavier fishes don't.
And cod is more you can't. It's hard to make sushi from cod just because it has a lot more parasites that you have to be careful of. So
they'll die in the lemon juice.
That's true.
All right. All right. You've now inspired me, Cassy Joy.
Yeah, it's definitely cool.
All right.
This has been awesome. Anything else you want our listeners to know, or any place else you want to direct them to, or?
No, thank you so much. And if y'all are interested in the books, they're available everywhere books are sold. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, your local bookseller probably has a copy of one, if not both. My very first book, Fed and Fit, is great. It's still out there. I like to say that the woman who wrote that, she wasn't married and she didn't have kids, so don't hold that against her.
Right? Yeah. No, nice. I get it. Totally get it. This has been great, Cassy Joy. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to close out the show. Thanks for listening to another episode of the 5 Journeys podcast, Live Like You Matter. Our guest today is Cassy Joy Garcia, and she is the author of Cook Once, Eat All Week, and Cook Once, Dinner Fix, and Fed and Fit. Thanks, Cassy.